I never believed people when they said, "Trust your instincts." I used to think fear was just anxiety, something your brain created when it got bored or lonely. But after what happened in the fall of 2021, I don't ignore that feeling anymore. At the time, I had just moved to a small apartment complex outside Portland, Oregon. Nothing fancy, just one of those quiet, slightly old apartment buildings where nobody really talks to each other. The kind of place where people leave for work early, come home late, and pretend nobody else exists. I had moved there after a breakup. I wanted somewhere cheap, somewhere quiet, and honestly, somewhere I could disappear for a while. The apartment itself wasn't bad. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, cheap rent, thin walls, and neighbors who mostly kept to themselves. At first, everything felt normal. Actually, boringly normal. Every morning, I'd leave for work around 7:30. Every evening, I'd come back around 6, eat dinner, watch something random, go to sleep, and repeat. That routine lasted about 3 weeks, until I noticed him. Apartment 14B. Across the hallway, the old man. The first time I saw him, he was standing outside his door, not moving, just standing there, like he had forgotten what he was doing. He looked around 70, thin, gray hair, pale skin, always wearing the same dark sweater. I remember giving him one of those awkward neighbor smiles. You know, the polite kind. But he didn't smile back, didn't nod, didn't even blink. He just stared. Not angry, not confused, just staring, like he was studying me. I remember feeling uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he had dementia. Maybe he was just weird. Everybody has a weird neighbor, right? A few days later, I saw him again, this time when I got home from work. He was standing near the hallway window, completely still, looking outside. And the weird thing was, when I walked past him, he slowly turned his head and watched me all the way to my apartment door. I remember fumbling with my keys because I suddenly felt nervous, which made no sense. He was an old man. What exactly was I scared of? Still, something about him felt wrong. Not dangerous, just off. That night, around 11:30, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow footsteps, back and forth, back and forth. At first, I ignored it. Apartment buildings are noisy. People walk around. No big deal. But after 20 minutes, the footsteps still hadn't stopped. So, eventually, I looked through the peephole and immediately wished I hadn't. It was him, the old man, standing directly outside my apartment. Not knocking, not moving, just standing there, facing my door. I remember freezing. My first thought was, maybe he's confused. Maybe he forgot which apartment was his. But then, he slowly looked up, directly toward the peephole, and for a second, I swear, it felt like he knew I was watching. I stepped back immediately, my heart pounding. I told myself I was overreacting. He was old. Maybe he was sleepwalking. Maybe he had memory problems. So I waited. 10 minutes. Then 20. Finally, I checked again. The hallway was empty. The next morning, I almost convinced myself it never happened, until I opened my apartment door and saw something sitting on the floor. A paper bag. No name. No note. Just sitting there. I looked around the hallway. Nobody. Slowly, I picked it up, and inside was dog food. That was strange, because I didn't own a dog. Not then. Not ever. And somehow, that made the whole thing feel even worse. Because it meant one thing. Whoever left it thought they knew something about me. Or worse, thought they knew me. I stood there for a full minute, just staring at the paper bag. Dog food. Cheap brand. Already opened. And somehow, that bothered me more. Because it meant this wasn't an accident. Someone had picked this up from inside their apartment, walked across the hallway, and left it at my door. For me, I looked toward apartment 14B. The old man's door was closed. No sound. Nothing. I thought about knocking, asking if he made a mistake. But something stopped me. Instead, I just tossed the bag into the trash room downstairs and went to work. The entire day, I kept thinking about it. And every time I tried explaining it logically, something still felt wrong. Because if he was confused, why my apartment? Why dog food? And why stand outside my door for 20 minutes? That evening, I got home later than usual, around 7. The hallway lights flickered like they always did. Old building. Cheap maintenance. I unlocked my apartment door and stopped. Something was different. At first, I couldn't tell what, but then I noticed it. My welcome mat. It had moved. Only slightly. Like someone had stepped on it. Or shifted it. Now, that sounds stupid. I know. It's a welcome mat. Who cares? But when you live alone, you notice little things. And I knew exactly how I left it. Suddenly, that weird nervous feeling came back. I checked inside. Everything looked normal. Nothing stolen. Nothing missing. Still, I locked the door immediately. That night, I kept hearing noises. Very small noises. Almost impossible to notice. A creak. A soft thump. Footsteps in the hallway. Then silence. Then more footsteps. Around midnight, I heard something else. A scratching sound. Very faint. At first, I thought it was inside the wall. Maybe rats. Old buildings always have problems. But then, I realized something. The sound wasn't coming from the wall. It was coming from my front door. I froze, completely still. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow, gentle, almost careful. Like someone was trying not to be heard. I grabbed my phone, thought about calling the police. But what would I even say? Hi, someone might be scratching my door. So instead, I slowly walked toward the peephole. Every instinct in my body told me not to. But curiosity won. I looked, and immediately felt sick. It was him, the old man, standing there again. Except this time, he wasn't just standing. He was crouched near my door, slowly dragging his fingers across the wood, like he was feeling it. Studying it. His lips were moving, like he was whispering something, but I couldn't hear it. Then, without warning, he stopped and turned his head directly toward the peephole. Again, perfectly, slowly, like he knew exactly where I was standing. I jumped back, almost dropped my phone. I don't know why, but something about the way he looked at the door felt deliberate, not confused, not accidental, like he wanted me scared. A few seconds later, I heard footsteps walking away. I checked again. Empty hallway. That was the first night. I pushed a chair against my front door. I barely slept. The next morning, I finally decided to report it to building management. The manager was this tired woman named Lisa. Mid-50s, always looked stressed. I explained everything. The staring, the hallway pacing, the dog food, the scratching. She listened quietly, then gave me this weird look, like she was deciding whether to say something. Finally, she sighed and said, "Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this." Then she leaned closer and lowered her voice. "You're not the first person who's complained about him." I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then said, "People from your apartment, 14A, they never stay long." I laughed nervously. "What? Because of him?" She didn't laugh back. Instead, she just said, "Just make sure you lock your door." And somehow, that scared me more than anything else. After talking to Lisa, I seriously considered moving out. Not because of one creepy old guy, but because of the way she said it. "People from your apartment never stay long." That sentence stayed in my head all day. At work, I couldn't focus. I kept replaying everything. The staring, the pacing, the scratching, the dog food, and most of all, the way he always seemed to know when I was looking through the peephole. By the time I got home, I was exhausted. I remember standing outside my apartment door for a second, listening. Silence. No footsteps. No strange sounds. Nothing. For the first time in days, the hallway felt normal. Apartment 14B was quiet too. Its lights were off. No movement under the door. Honestly, that should have made me feel better. Instead, it somehow made things worse. Because creepy people being quiet is always scarier. I went inside, locked the door, checked every room, and tried to relax. Around 9:30, I ordered food and turned on some random show. For a couple hours, everything felt fine. Almost normal again. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No message. Just a picture. I frowned. At first, I thought it was spam. But when I opened it, my stomach dropped. It was a photo of my apartment door, taken from the hallway, very recently, because the food delivery bag was still outside. I stared at the image, confused, then terrified. Who took this? Wrong number? Prank? I checked for another message. Nothing. No explanation. No words. Just the picture. I immediately looked through the peephole. Nobody there. The hallway was empty. Then my phone buzzed again. Another picture. This one, closer. My front door. Zoomed in. I felt my chest tighten. My hands shaking. Whoever sent this was standing outside. Right now, I backed away from the door. And for the first time, I actually considered calling the police. Then, another message came through. Only this time, it was text. 3 words. Wrong apartment. That was it. No name. No explanation. Nothing. A second later, the number disappeared. Disconnected. I tried calling back. Didn't work. I stood there frozen, trying to convince myself this was some stupid prank. Maybe teenagers. Maybe a neighbor messing around. But deep down, I already knew. I knew who it probably was. Apartment 14B. That night, I barely slept again. Around 3 in the morning, I woke up thirsty. The apartment was completely dark. Quiet. Too quiet. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed water, and that's when I noticed something. My living room window. The blinds were slightly open. Only a little. And through the gap, I could see the apartment building across from mine. Most windows dark, except one. A single light. 3rd floor. Directly across from me. At first, I didn't understand why it bothered me. Then I realized the angle. That apartment had a perfect view. straight into my living room. And standing at the window, completely motionless, was a figure, watching. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I already knew. Same shape, same posture, same stillness. The old man, apartment 14B, just standing there, looking directly at my apartment. At 3 a.m, not moving, not blinking, just watching. I quickly shut the blinds, locked the window, and stepped back, trying to calm myself down. Then I heard something, very softly, outside my apartment door, a sound I recognized immediately. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow, gentle, patient, like he knew. I was awake. The scratching continued. Slow, steady, almost rhythmic, like whoever was outside wasn't in a hurry. I stood frozen in my kitchen, every light off, heart pounding so hard I could actually hear it. For a second, I thought about yelling, maybe banging on the door, telling him to leave me alone. But something stopped me, because deep down, I didn't want confirmation. I didn't want to know for sure who was standing outside. So, instead, I quietly grabbed my phone and called the police. I tried to keep my voice calm, but even the dispatcher could tell I was nervous. I told her someone had been harassing me, standing outside my apartment, watching me, scratching my door at night. She asked, "Are they trying to enter?" I listened. The scratching paused. Silence. Then, 3 soft taps. Knock. 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 Not loud. Not aggressive. Just careful. Deliberate. Like they knew I was listening. I whispered, "Yes." 20 minutes later, 2 officers arrived. By then, the hallway was empty. Of course, always empty. I explained everything. The photos, the messages, the staring. Apartment 14B. 1 officer knocked on his door. No answer. Again, nothing. Finally, the older officer sighed and said, "Probably just an elderly guy with mental issues." Then he gave me the kind of smile people give when they think you're overreacting. He told me to call again if anything serious happened. And just like that, they left. I remember feeling stupid, embarrassed. Maybe I really was imagining things. Maybe loneliness was messing with my head. After all, nothing had actually happened. No break-in, no threats, no proof, just weird behavior. The next 2 days, everything stopped. No scratching, no pacing, no staring. I didn't even see him. Apartment 14B stayed completely quiet. Honestly, those 2 days were worse, because silence gives your brain too much time to think. Every time I walked past his apartment, I felt this weird urge to look at the door, like I expected him to suddenly appear. But nothing, no sound, no movement. Then, on the 3rd night, something happened. I got home around 6 and noticed apartment 14B's door was slightly open, just a few inches. Dark inside. No TV, no lights, nothing. I slowed down without even realizing it, and that's when I smelled it. Something strange. Not rotten. Not exactly. Just old. Like dust. Wet carpet. And something metallic underneath. The kind of smell old basements have. I should have kept walking. Normal people would have kept walking. But curiosity is stupid. And fear makes you do weird things. So I glanced inside. Only for a second. The apartment looked empty, almost abandoned. Bare walls. No furniture near the entrance. No decorations. Nothing. Then, I noticed something on the wall. Photos. Dozens of them. Pinned up. Messily. Some old, some new. At first, I couldn't understand what I was looking at. Then my stomach dropped. Apartments. Hallways. Doors. People entering their homes. Neighbors. Photos taken secretly. From far away. Like surveillance. And in the center, one photo stood out. Newer than the others. Closer. Clearer. It was me. Standing outside my apartment. Holding groceries. Taken from behind. I felt every hair on my body stand up. Then, from somewhere deep inside the apartment, I heard movement. A floorboard creak. Slow, heavy footsteps. Coming closer. I turned immediately. Walked fast. Not running. Just fast. Trying not to panic. Trying not to look scared. Then I heard it. Behind me. His voice. Calm. Quiet. Almost friendly. You weren't supposed to see that. I didn't turn around. I just unlocked my apartment, went inside, locked everything, and for the first time since moving there, I seriously thought, I'm in danger. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every small sound in my apartment felt louder than it should have been. The refrigerator clicking, the pipes in the wall, even my own breathing. All of it felt wrong, like the building itself was aware of me. I kept checking the door lock. Again and again. 3 locks, then a chair against it. Then I sat on my couch, staring at the door, waiting. Around 2:40 a.m., my phone buzzed. I almost didn't pick it up. Unknown number again. My hands were shaking before I even opened it. One message. Just one line. You looked inside. That was it. No photo. No follow-up. Just that sentence. I felt my stomach drop. Because that meant one thing. He knew. He knew I had been inside apartment 14B. I stood up immediately. Walked to the peephole. Slowly. Carefully. Looked out. Empty hallway. No movement. But something felt off. The hallway light. It was flickering again. Except now, it wasn't random. It was rhythmic. On. Off. On. Off. Like a signal. I stepped back. Took my phone. And this time, I decided I was done guessing. I called the police again. While the phone was ringing, I heard something outside my door. Very soft. A dragging sound. Like something being pulled slowly across the floor. Then, a faint whisper. Not clear words. Just breath. Close. Too close. The dispatcher answered. I tried speaking, but my voice came out broken. Someone is outside my door. She asked me to stay on the line. I pressed my ear to the wall instead. The sound outside stopped. Complete silence. Then, a knock. But this time, it wasn't gentle. It was firm. Once, then again, harder. Knock, knock, knock. And then, the voice, right outside, close enough that I felt it in my chest. You shouldn't have called them. I froze. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The dispatcher was still talking in my ear, but I couldn't respond because I realized something. That voice wasn't just outside the door. It sounded like it was inside the hallway, right in front of me. Then, the lights in the hallway went out. Total darkness. My phone screen became the only light in the apartment, and in that moment, I heard something I'll never forget. A slow, metal scraping sound right at my door handle. Someone was trying to open it. Slowly, carefully, like they had done it before. I backed away immediately, heart racing. And then, the handle moved. Just slightly. Down, then back up. Testing. Waiting. Like whoever was outside was deciding whether to enter. I whispered into the phone. "Send police now." But before I could say anything else, the line went dead. No signal. No sound. Just silence. And then, the final message arrived. On my screen. From the unknown number again. One last line. "We don't knock anymore." I didn't move. I couldn't. The door was still there. The handle still slightly vibrating. And from the other side, I heard something that made my blood go cold. A soft laugh. Like he was enjoying it. I don't know how long I stood there. Seconds felt like minutes. Minutes felt like hours. My entire body was locked in place, just watching the door handle, waiting for it to turn fully, waiting for the door to open. But it didn't. The handle slowly stopped moving, and everything went silent again. No knocking, no scratching, no footsteps, just nothing. That silence was worse than the noise, because silence means one of two things. Either he left, or he's waiting. I backed away slowly from the door, step by step, never taking my eyes off it. Then I grabbed my phone. No signal. Still dead. I tried the emergency call again. Nothing. That's when I realized this wasn't just a random moment. Something was interfering, or blocking it. I don't know how, but I knew I was on my own. I went to the kitchen, picked up the only thing I had, a heavy metal pan. It sounds stupid now, but at that moment it felt like the only protection I had. I stood near the hallway entrance, watching my door, waiting for it to move. And then, I heard something, not from the door, from inside the apartment building. The stairs, footsteps, slow, climbing, one step at a time, coming closer, to my floor. I held my breath. The footsteps stopped right outside my floor. Silence again. Then, a soft creak. My apartment door handle didn't move this time. Instead, I heard something worse. A key sliding into the lock. Slowly, carefully, like it already fit. My heart dropped because I knew I had locked everything. All 3 locks. Then, the door didn't open. Instead, a voice came through the wood. Calm, very close, almost conversational. "I told you. You weren't supposed to see." I whispered back, "Who are you?" A pause, then a soft sigh, like disappointment. And finally, the answer. "I'm the reason people don't stay in 14A. My stomach went cold. And then, he said something that didn't make sense at first. At first, I just watched. Then I documented. Then I started correcting mistakes. My mind was spinning. Correcting mistakes? What does that even mean? Then I heard something behind my door. A faint sound. Paper. Being slid under the gap. I didn't move, but I looked. Slowly. It was a photo. New. Fresh. And it was taken. Inside my apartment. From tonight. Me. Standing in the dark. Holding the pan. Looking at the door. I felt like my body shut down. Because that meant he wasn't just outside. He had been inside before. Or he had access. Or worse, he never left the building at all. Then, a sudden loud bang. Not from my door. From somewhere else in the building. Then another, and another. Footsteps. Running now. Multiple people. And then, sirens. Finally, police. Voices in the hallway. Flashlights. Chaos. I ran to the door immediately, but before I could open it, I heard one last thing. Very close. Right on the other side. His voice again, but different now. Not calm. Not controlled. Just quiet. Almost amused. They'll never find me in 14B. The police started shouting. Open the door. Are you inside? I unlocked everything. Open the door. Light flooded in. 2 officers grabbed me immediately, pulling me out, asking questions. What happened? Where is he? Which apartment? I pointed, shaking, directly at 14B. The officers rushed over, kicked the door open, broke inside. I followed behind slowly. The apartment was empty, completely empty. No photos, no furniture, no smell, nothing. Just bare walls, dust, and silence. One officer turned to me, confused. There's nothing here. I shook my head. No, he was here. He was just... Then I stopped, because I saw something on the floor, near the entrance. A small tag. Old. Rusty. Building maintenance tag. And on it, faded but readable, was a name. Apartment 14. Be vacant for 6 months. I froze, because that didn't make sense. I turned to the hallway, to my apartment, to the officers, to everything. And in that moment, I realized something I still can't explain. If 14B was empty, then who was I talking to? The officer put a hand on my shoulder, told me I was probably stressed, hallucinating, sleep deprivation, trauma response. They said people sometimes see things when they're alone too long. They wrote it off, just like that. And eventually, they left. The building went quiet again, normal again, or so they thought. Because I moved out the next morning, I never went back. But here's the part I don't tell anyone. Sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I still hear it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Slow, patient, like someone is still standing outside, waiting for me to look again.